The following is for informational purposes only. For medical advice, please see a medical professional.
Welcome to Staying Alive with Margaret and Susy. In this episode today, we're calling it Aging in Place, which is a really huge topic. And we don't necessarily mean staying in the same place where we live, but we're talking about, are we in our forever homes? And why is this important? And it's interesting. There's a new expression. I don't know if you've heard it, Susie. It's called I've heard it called the senior tsunami, the silver tsunami, and the gray tsunami. Have you heard of
Mm,
that? And that's
no.
basically us baby boomers. In the next 4 years, by 2030, we will make up 1/5 of the entire population of the United States.
Not surprising.
And I heard that 1/4 of us live in one of three states: California, Florida, or Texas. And
Oh,
I
wow.
live in California, as some of you know. And so if we're all aging and have the same needs at the same time, there are
Yeah.
not going to be enough places available to put us all as there were in our parents' generation. And we have
Yeah.
to figure it out. We have to figure out, are we able to stay in place or not? And how are we
Yeah.
going to make that decision? And and as I thought about it, I came up with three topics. Like Susie and I don't know. Here's another one. I don't know if you've heard. Have you heard of the 40/70 rule? This is something that was reinvented from some other terminology around decision making process. But what they're saying nowadays with aging groups is like, when you're in your 70s and the younger people in your life are in their 40s, perhaps your children,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps not, that's when you have to start having these conversations. And we can
Mm-hmm.
start them. It's better, to me, it's better for our kids or younger people if we're the ones starting them. So we're in our 70s. We need to start having these conversations. We need to figure it out. And Susie and I are just in the beginning stages of that, as you're going to hear
Mm-hmm.
as we talk about it. And so we don't have it all figured out. So you know what,
No.
we guys, we're probably going to be revisiting this topic over and over again,
Yeah.
perhaps as we make changes in our life. And as I saw for today's episode, I came up with three scenarios. We're going to talk about the pros and cons. Number one, making accommodations to stay in place where we are. Is that reasonable? Number two, downsizing where we are to get
Mm-hmm.
ready to move into a smaller, more manageable space. Or number three, moving into a more communal situation that would probably need to be multi-generational, because if we're all the same age, we can't
Right.
get all our needs met because we're all going to be
Right.
stopping driving at the same time. So I was thinking about, like, what factors do we need to take into account? Of course, there's home safety and look what's going on inside our home, but then also, do we have the physical ability to maintain our home, including do we
Mm-hmm.
have the money to maintain
Right.
it?
Right.
And if we stay in our home, wherever we live, do we have the transportation we need to get where we
Right.
need to get
You
to?
know, Margaret, I started having this conversation with my husband last year, um, because it suddenly hit me that there were a lot of things around my house that I'm not sure that we should be doing anymore, but also, did we want to do? You know, there's
Yeah,
also that aspect of it. It's like, do you want to spend the last part of your life doing home maintenance, taking care of a house, taking care of, the windows, the gutters, the maintenance, or do you want to be doing other things with your life? Do you
yeah,
want to be traveling? Do you want to be socializing? Do you want to do painting or I mean, it's interesting. And we started having conversations about, is this what we want to do?
yeah. And let
Yeah.
me just tell people, for those who don't know, Susie is a homeowner. She owns her
Mm-hmm.
own home, and she'll describe that a little bit. And I am a renter in an urban area. So, making accommodations to stay in place for me actually is not an option because
Mm-hmm.
I know my landlady, and even if I said, I'll have the money to pay for it, I'll make all the accommodations necessary, I'll put my own money into it, and I will leave the money to restore the place to its original, she would say, absolutely not. Move
Mm-hmm.
out. You have
Mm-hmm.
no legal right to do that. And
Right.
so I
Right.
already know for certain that I do not live in a place where I could make accommodations to stay in place. But Susie could. And so
Somewhat, yeah.
let's just stick with that first
Mm-hmm.
topic to kind of talk through how would one decide that? Like, because my parents made the decision to stay in place, and what they needed was, and they had, was the money to pay people to do every single thing that they used to do. And so
Right.
Susie would need to look at her budget and say, okay, how much would I need to pay a gardener to do the gardening Johnny
Mm-hmm.
and I do? How much would the yard work cost?
Mm-hmm.
How much will it cost
To get the windows washed.
to get the windows
Yeah.
washed?
I just looked into it. It was a lot.
I happen to know Susie and Johnny did their own house painting the last time. How much does the house
Not
painting
anymore.
cost?
Yeah.
How
Anymore.
often do we need to redo the outside windowsills? Because we live in the
Mm-hmm.
Northwest and we don't
Yeah.
want, well,
Yeah.
we have to keep those in good shape. Like, just go down the list of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
a lot of stuff. Yeah. It's a lot of stuff. And and then also I sort of felt like, okay, I have X amount of years left in my life.
yeah,
And all the stuff that we do currently at our house, we enjoy doing the yard and the garden and stuff. I really love that. But is it what I want to be doing?
yeah.
I'm not sure.
And
Yeah.
for some people it is like
Sure. Yeah.
my father, and perhaps even your spouse who's been a gardener and an arborist or is, perhaps that is what they want to be doing.
Right.
Perhaps that's their
Right.
greatest joy.
It is what he wants to do.
Hmm.
Definitely. Yeah. He loves it. He would live outside in the nice weather. He would never
And
come in the house.
that becomes tricky too if when uh, a couple is not on the same page. Perhaps
Hmm.
one person wants to be at home gardening all day long, whereas another wants to keep going to the bridge club. So they would rather
Right.
be in a senior
Right.
living situation where they could have friends and play bridge all day long because none of their
Yeah.
friends can drive anymore and now they're socially isolated. So
Well,
you have to really know yourself
you
and
do. And
know.
I had a friend who worked at a senior area agency on aging. And when my mother was starting to get dementia, she said to me, one of the real key things that you don't want to do with a person who's starting to have some memory problems is move them a lot. You don't want them to be changing residences like, oh, like, oh, we're going to live here for a while, and then in this apartment, and then we're going to go to this facility, and then we're going to live with a family member. It makes it really hard on the person.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about too.
And
Yeah.
that's where like the 40/70 rule comes in because what they know statistically is the decision has to be made in your 70s. By the time you're in your
Hmm.
80s, then you're just
And stuff
um, a
happens, and then
victim
you're
to the
stuck.
forces. You're just a victim to the
Yeah.
forces. And I know
Yeah.
my mom, when she hit her 80s, she kept telling me over and over again, I made a mistake. We should have moved. We should have moved. We should have
Hmm.
moved
Yeah.
because her social life was over and she was devastated by that. She didn't care
Right.
anything about going out in the yard and doing one stick of yard work,
Hmm.
You
But she had a
miss,
social life. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
She
really
loved to play
true.
cards more than anything. It was her favorite thing to
Yeah.
do.
And
And
that gets, location becomes a really big deal. My mother was faced with not being able to see a lot of her friends when she got older because they lived in the Seattle area where traffic was terrible. People couldn't drive. They couldn't get around like
hmm
they wanted to. And so those are all considerations. And then we all know that certain things happen. And when I worked for Meals on Wheels, Meals on Wheels is a program that deals with people who are homebound. It's not an income-based program. And I saw situations where people were stuck because they hadn't made the decision to move. And then they were in a situation where they really couldn't move because they had physical limitations. And you really need
Yes.
to have a plan. We even had a client who ended up in the hospital for over a month. Guess what? His landlord moved him out of his house while he was in the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, you really need to have a plan.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I live in a city where there are laws that protect that. And
Dang,
I
you're
could sue
lucky.
and get a lot of money if somebody did
Yeah,
that
but
to
it
me.
was like, whoa.
But I don't want to be, a victim to the forces of whatever happens.
Hmm.
I'm a planner, and I want to plan
Hmm.
for this. And so I know that I'll be moving in the next 5, 10 years at the very most, and I'm deciding where that is. And I know for me, I don't want to downsize to a smaller, manageable space. I think I do want to live communally, and I'll circle back to that, like what my vision is around that. But one thing I wanted to say about downsizing to a smaller place, let's focus on that for a minute. In our parents' generation, as Susie sort of suggested, they just moved into senior living situations. And I know that my
Hmm.
parents, my mother and her girlfriends, when two of them were ready to go, because oftentimes the men died before their wives. That wasn't the case in my parents' situation, but then the widows were like, let's move together to such and such nursing home, So then they buddied up in the places that they went, and they were all nice places, and because they had
Hmm.
resources. But
Hmm.
that's not the state of affairs for most people in this country, nor is it the situation that our baby boomer age population is going to be dealing with
That's
because
right.
we're going to be competing for those resources, and only the super rich, which we are not, are going to get the decent places to live.
Yeah,
And
it's
s-
very challenging.
and so if we decide to downsize or move or have to move in probably my case, we have to think about how we're going to do that. So
Hmm.
downsizing to a small, manageable space, that's possible. I mean, I know
Hmm. Hmm.
that's one of the reasons
Unknown caller.
why people move to Florida. That's one of the reasons people move to Florida, because there are lots of living situations like that. There are communities that have been built up that way, and they often include very expensive HOA fees. I mean, these 55 plus communities, there are places to go, but then it still can be an isolating situation. There can be transportation issues. Uh, when people move and they don't have any friends in an area, that's something to consider. So it's a lot to consider
It is a
downsizing.
lot.
But if you think you might want to downsize and you know you need to downsize, it's always good to start with where you're at and just start getting rid of stuff. I mean, Susie,
Yeah,
you told me
yeah,
you've started to take loads to
I do.
Goodwill or wherever you're
Yeah, I
taking stuff.
donate a lot of
Mhm.
stuff and it feels good to do that. I've also discussed with my daughter, who's 41, so what of this stuff do you want? I ask her all the time, do you want this stuff? because I have things that, she already has a house full of stuff, does she need my stuff? So we
Yeah.
we talk about it. And sometimes she says, yeah, yeah, I'll keep it, or yeah, yeah, I don't want it.
My son doesn't want anything except
Yeah,
in
that's
digital
handy.
format, anything I can take a picture of, send it to him. And I have a lot of things that I inherited from my mom and my grandma. And last time he came, he said, "It's like a mausoleum in here," and he's my only child, and he's thinking, "What am I gonna do with this stuff? I can't throw grandma's such and such away. I'll be cursed, by the dead. Like, oh my God, So we really do, in this for the sake of our children or family members, if we don't have kids, we need to take care of our
Yeah, you do.
SHIT ourselves, okay?
Yes, we
Like
do.
so
We
like
do.
so maybe Susie and I can have an episode where like we talk about clearing out clutter and like what we got rid of this week. That
Yeah,
would
we
be like
could. We could. I'd like that
that
because I
would
I
that
am
would
better at it than my husband. Let's just put it that way.
that
Way
would,
better.
that would be like really inspiring
In other
for
words, what
people.
was under the house for 25 years,
Hmm.
we got rid of it. It's like
There's
you haven't looked at it in
There's
25
a
years.
term in Sweden called Swedish death cleaning.
Yeah.
It's
No,
like
that's
because we don't want to leave a bunch of stuff for
Hey,
people
my
to have
mother
to
got
deal
rid of
with.
most of her stuff, and I was so grateful.
Yeah.
So grateful. Yeah.
So I'm going to move on because we don't want to make this too long, and we're going to keep revisiting it. The third idea is to live in a multi-generational community situation, and as opposed to moving into a senior nursing home or whatever they call
Assisted
the
living.
assisted living type
Yeah.
situations where it's graduated and then you can move up, because that was fine for my parents' generation, who didn't mind having an activity director and an activity board that told you what to do every day, but that doesn't really suit with our generation too well.
Well,
We want to do our own thing.
my mother lived in one of those kind of places. And what I noticed is, and I have even visited since then because my grandson went to a daycare center next door. The culture just wasn't updated. It would have
Yeah.
to dramatically change in order to facilitate my generation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my son was visiting a friend's family member, I think, at one of those places, and they were having music day, and the guy was singing like music from the 1950s, and I thought to
Right.
myself,
Right.
wait, those people look like they're my age. Like, why isn't he
Yes.
singing like Rod Stewart or something?
Yeah,
Like what? Like,
exactly.
come on.
Exactly. They haven't really, it's hard. It's hard, I'm sure, because some people are in their 90s and some people are in their 70s, but they need to update the culture in some of those places. I have to say that our senior center has done a really good job of that.
Yeah.
And they should be a model for some of these assisted living places.
So I'm interested in a different kind of communal living situation. Like if I own my own place, like and I've heard of this done where I live, if I might bring in a younger couple and
Hmm.
sign my house over to them, if I didn't have kids. Like I have a friend in town here who just recently got diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. She's single. She lives alone in her condo. She has no heirs. And we're kind of talking about that. Like, I know some
Hmm.
young couples that would be so happy to take care of you, Eileen, and think about it, because the one thing we do have as we're older is we have resources. I mean, I
Hmm.
do anyway. I have some resources. Younger people need resources. Younger people are,
And they
you
need
know,
housing. I mean, the
they
price of
need
housing these
housing.
days.
They
Yeah.
need they need jobs,
Hmm.
and we can provide those. And so,
Yeah.
I, I've
I
talked
could
a
even do that
lot.
in my house, Margaret. I could easily do that in my house because I have an upstairs that has a bathroom, and I have thought of that. We could
Yeah,
have someone else live here, and they could have the upstairs, and we could have the downstairs, and that's kind of in our plans.
yeah.
If it doesn't work out that way, I mean, we do have a daughter who can help out, but it may be that may be what we do. Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah.
And I have a couple different communal situations like that I've heard about in my family. Like, I know that my niece, for instance, her partner, his parents just moved out of their house in Florida into a senior living place, and they're keeping the house, and they're thinking about, and they're actually decided the parents hated the senior living place. They're moving back
Mm.
home and they're hiring people. And my niece said, "And mom, when the time comes, you're moving in there too. We're all going to be living there. We're all going to be living there." Now,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't have a child who would be interested at all in that. But you know what? My cousin has kids that would be interested in that, and
Mm-hmm.
they need the money, and so that's in the back of my mind. Well, uh, I can always go live with well, Jen and pay her daughter to take care of me. Like, my sister asked me that, like, well, where would you go? Like, so I'm just lucky that I do have a lot of connection to family and friends where I know I can figure it out when the time comes. But I would like to be more proactive about it. I have a friend who's moving now to a community where her daughter owns a large plot of land. And this is actually in the Midwest outside of Madison, Wisconsin. And they're going to be building there. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm up for that. Like, I know
Mm-hmm.
your family are all musicians and they have the same thinking as I do. If they want to build a community, I'm in. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm still considering that. And what I like about that is it's not too long of a drive to Minneapolis, and that's where Mayo Clinic is. And one of my
Mm-hmm.
considerations is I want to be living somewhere where I have access to good health care.
Mm-hmm.
So we're
Yeah.
gonna we're gonna keep brainstorming about this because I
Yeah.
know I've got some big things to figure out. If Susie remodels her house and brings someone in, we may introduce them on this episode on this
Yeah. Well, it might be a while, but yeah.
program sometime.
Yeah.
Like
It's just something I just saw so many situations again when I was working at Meals on Wheels where people kind of felt stuck. And so it's important to realize that you're not going to get younger.
right,
You're going to have some health concerns. Almost all people do.
yeah,
And sometimes they're minor, sometimes they're major.
yeah,
And you don't know. And so it's important to really be thinking about it. That's
yeah,
that's the bottom line. Be
and
thinking about it.
and I hope you heard me saying that the time to do it is 70 because
Mhm.
that when people feel stuck, unless they have had major health problems, the average age where people feel stuck is in your 80s. And so like
Right. Right.
this is the time, and definitely in your 90s. And so this
Hmm.
is the time to do it right now. And and I are gonna circle back to this topic many times as we go through
Hmm.
this process with you all. So
Yeah.
let's end it there. And
Yeah.
you want to
Thank
tell
you so
people to
much.
like and subscribe,
Yeah.
and
Check
until
out our
next,
website,
yeah.
Staying
And
Alive with Margaret and Susie, SUSY.com.
okay. And so
Yeah.
until next time, we are
Staying
staying
alive.
alive.
You've been listening to Staying Alive with Margaret and Susie. This show is hosted by Margaret Cooley and Susie Hymas. To subscribe to our show, leave a comment or ask a question, please visit stayingalivewithmargaretandsusie.com. Our podcast is available on all major podcast platforms. If you've enjoyed our program, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for listening.